Today we are talking about the Jujutsu Kaisen Iceberg. What is an iceberg? Well, it's a chart that organizes memes and information from the most well-known to the most obscure. You can find one of these for pretty much everything. And today we're going to be looking at one that I compiled for Jujutsu Kaisen. So let's get started above the water with Yuji is dumb. This is just common knowledge. It's established pretty early on that Yuji is just kind of dumb in all non-combat situations. He just kind of lacks common sense and a bit of perception, but I think it makes him all the more lovable. Next we have shit yourself. The first time anyone sees Inumaki, they usually have one of two thoughts. Wait, so if he tells someone to die, they'll die? Or what if he tells them to shit themselves? For obvious reasons, the second one has become a much more popular meme among new fans, to the point that it's almost a rite of passage to ask that question. Next we have Gege hates Gojo. Gege Akutami, the author of Jujutsu Kaisen, has stated multiple times that he's not a fan of Gojo as a character. He made it very clear with his reactions to the 2020 character popularity poll, and he has stated his disliking of Gojo in multiple interviews as well. Next we have cursed energy equals Nen. Nen is the power system from Hunter x Hunter, and it holds a lot of similarities to cursed energy. Both require immense training to control, both can be used to reinforce body parts or items, both are unobservable to the average person, and both have a fairly similar visual appearance. It's pretty clear the author took some heavy inspiration from Hunter x Hunter for cursed energy, and it turned into a pretty cool power system. The last point in tier 1 is 53,000 IQ. This references Todo's IQ, which has become a somewhat popular meme in large part due to Todo's popularity as a character, and because of how his IQ seems to go against the stereotypes of a character like Todo. Let's move on to layer 2, starting with Hanami's domain. We actually learned some information about Hanami's domain from the fanbook. Its name is Shining Sea of Flowers, implying that it would take place in some sort of meadow or garden. The domain itself would give the opponent some sort of debuff and a guaranteed hit to Hanami's flower attack. Gege's gender refers to the ambiguities surrounding the author's gender. We really have no information on the author, but most people assume they are male. Door theory is a theory that each door we see at the beginning of the manga is meant to resemble a different arc in Jujutsu Kaisen. I think it originated from how each door looks a little bit different, and you know, the Shibuya door being huge compared to all the other doors, but there's really nothing else that supports this, and I think it's pretty unlikely. Gege equals Gege refers to the author's habit of drawing men that are really hot. While this can be said for most modern manga authors, Gege also has a habit of drawing shirtless attractive men. This has led some fans to speculate about the author's sexual orientation, but personally I don't really care one way or the other, and I don't think it matters in the long run. Next we have the real Iron Mountain. Coffin of the Iron Mountain is the domain belonging to Jogo, but when you search for Iron Mountain in our world, nothing relevant comes up. That's because there isn't one, at least not a notable one. Instead, it's based on the myth of 9 mountains and 8 seas from ancient Indian cosmology. In this myth, the center of Earth is Mount Sumeru, which has 8 mountain ranges circling around it. The range that's furthest away from Mount Sumeru is made of iron. This is where the name Iron Mountain comes from. Next we have Sukuna's interest in Megumi. It's no secret that Sukuna has some interest in Megumi, as it's been stated multiple times since early into season 1. But why is Sukuna so interested in him? Well, the main theory is that Sukuna wants to use Megumi to resurrect himself. We don't know exactly how this would happen, but it's possible it is in a connection to one of Megumi's unseen shadows, which we'll be diving into in a little bit. Let's move on to layer 3. This is where the theories start to get a little bit more out there and pretty deep. Starting off with Kashimo's curse technique. A lot of mystery surrounds Kashimo's curse technique. It can only be used one time, and right now we have no idea what it might be. A lot of fans have theorized that it's similar to the abilities of Killua, where he charges himself with electricity to increase his physical capabilities. But at this point in time, we really have no way to confirm or deny this. Next is Gojo's ulterior motive. This refers to the possibility that the reason Gojo is training so many students to such a high level is because he wants to use them to execute a coup on the current elders of Jujutsu Society. This mostly stems from the fact that Gojo is not happy with the current order of Jujutsu Society, and has gone on record saying he would kill every single elder if it meant creating change. He doesn't think killing them would create change because they would just be replaced by other elders. But if he had a large supporting base of students that are willing to take their spots or create a separate Jujutsu government, his goal of redefining Jujutsu Society would be much more attainable. The missing shadows refers to the remaining unknown shadows in Megumi's 10 shadows technique. As of right now, we know 7 of the 10 shadows, those being Divine Dog, Nue, Toad, Great Serpent, Max Elephant, Rabbit Escape, and Mahoraga. This leaves 3 slots open, and there has been a lot of speculation around what these last 3 could be. There seems to be 2 main sources of theorization, Shadow Puppets and the Sacred Treasures. The connection to Shadow Puppets is slightly stronger than the connection to the Sacred Treasures because there is a hand sign for every puppet so far, but not every shadow has a connection to the Sacred Treasures. Some of the remaining Shikigami could be shark, horse, or even human, and we'll touch upon that one in a little bit. These next 3 are all connected via Japanese literature. Let's start with Sugawara no Michizane. Michizane is an important figure in Jujutsu Kaisen and Japanese literature. In both, he's the founder of the Gojo clan, and in Jujutsu Kaisen specifically, he's the ancestor of Gojo and Yuta. There might also be a connection between Michizane and Uraume, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Michizane will be reappearing a few times throughout this video, so be sure to remember his name. Next we have Kenjaku is Ashiya Doman. In Jujutsu Kaisen, Simple Domain was created by Ashiya Tsurutsada. While this person does not exist in real life, there is a figure that shares the same family name, which is Ashiya Doman. Doman holds a lot of similarities to Kenjaku. Both are important to the Kamo clan, both are antagonistic in nature, and both have some sort of connection to India and China. A lot of people also claim that Kenjaku's reaction to seeing Simple Domain connects him to the Ashiya family. Personally, I think this one is a little bit of a stretch, but I did think it was interesting enough to point out. Next we have Uraume is based on or related to Unai. Who is Unai? She's a character from the Manyashu and is also featured in one of Michizame's poems, The Sought-For Grave. In this play, the kanji for ice formation appear multiple times, and the character Unai chose not to go to Buddhist paradise, instead choosing the Hellfire of Sukuna. The town where the play takes place is known as Ikuta, but it can also be interpreted as Ashiya, insinuating some connection to Kenjaku. A side note, both Ashiya and the Kamo clan are heavily referenced in the Manyashu, so if someone wants to take a look into that, it could yield some pretty interesting theories. And the last theory in layer 3 is the Sukuna chef theory. This is a pretty popular theory that Sukuna was a chef while he was alive. This is based on each of his cursed techniques relating to cooking, with cleave and dismantle being used for cutting, and his fire technique being used for, well, cooking. Let's move on to layer 4, where we start off with a banger. Real life vengeful spirits refers to the 3 vengeful spirits from Japanese literature and mythology. Those are Sugawara no Michizane, Tairo no Masakato, and Emperor Sutoku. We don't know much about these spirits other than Michizane being an ancestor of Gojo and Yuta. However, because of this relationship between the Gojo clan and Michizane, some fans have speculated that there might be a connection between all the real life vengeful spirits and the big 3 families of Jujutsu society. At this point in time, there's no mention of Masakato or Emperor Sutoku, so it's impossible to say if there are actually any connections here or not. Next we have Dagon's star. This theory states that Dagon created a star in his domain because we can see sunlight in it. I don't think I'm 100% convinced of this, because it would mean that Gojo would have to actually create a black hole in his domain, and Hikari would have to be capable of producing a train station in his. Nobara's return references the possibility of Nobara Kugasaki returning at some point after her death. There are a ton of sub-theories about how she'll return or what the circumstances of her return might be, but at this point it's been like 2 years since she died, so unfortunately I don't think it's likely we'll ever be seeing her again. The last culling game refers to the possibility that Kenjaku ran another culling game 1,000 years ago, and the product of this culling game was the creation of Sukuna. We don't really have any information on that time period right now, but considering Sukuna's strength and the purpose of the culling games, I don't think a previous culling games is something we can completely rule out. Next we have the previous inhabitant of the prison realm. Have you ever wondered who was in the prison realm before Gojo? I mean, someone had to be in there, right? Well, it could actually be someone in the show. Uraume is in a very bizarre position as she's an ancient sorcerer that has somehow survived the past 1,000 years. As far as we know, she has no technique that would allow her to live for this long naturally, so it's very possible that she went into the prison realm in order to stay alive until Sukuna could eventually be resurrected. It's possible she was released from the prison realm after the Goodwill event if Kenjaku and Tengen made contact while the disaster spirits were stealing their supplies. This theory is pretty out there, but if Tengen is actually a traitor like some people suggest, it definitely would not be impossible. Next we have Yuji is pregnant. This refers to the theory that Yuji is actually a cursed womb based on how his character has progressed throughout the story. Some people have also pointed out some similarity between him and a fetus in terms of the timeline of the progression of his character. Rika is not Rika is a theory that states that the Rika Yuta is using during the culling games is not the real Rika and might even be a completely different girl that he cursed while he was in Africa. This theory is actually at least partially true. true. The Rika we see in Sentai is not the same Rika as the one in Volume 0, as that one has been dispelled, but most people do not believe that this Rika is from the death of another girl. The spine in Megumi's domain is referencing the segments of a spinal cord that appear in the Chimera Shadow Garden during the Culling Games. Many fans theorize that this is a piece of the 9th or 10th shadow of his technique. It would most likely be based on a Gashu Dekoro, which is a giant skeleton-like creature originating in the Heian period. This creature is sometimes depicted as unkillable, but we don't really know how it would interact with Jujutsu. Personally, I think it would be really cool if this was a Shikigami that was specialized for domain expansion, but I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see what it is. The fight was staged refers to the possibility that Kenjaku staged the fight between the 10 Shadows user and the last holder of the 6 Eyes and Limitless technique. We have no evidence of this, but it's not completely out of the realm of possibilities considering how much Kenjaku fears the 6 Eyes and considering he is an extremely calculating strategist. And now, let's get into the final layer, Layer 5. But before we do, please consider subscribing. I know it's annoying to hear, but subscribing really does help me out a ton. Over 90% of my audience is not subscribed, so even just a few of you subscribing could make a huge difference for this channel. I would really appreciate it. Plus, you really have no reason not to. Like, when was the last time you even checked your subscription box? Anyway, Uraume's curse technique theory is connected to Sukuna's curse technique. We know that Sukuna and Uraume are both well acquainted, and a possibility of why that is that Uraume might have also been a chef and she helped Sukuna by refrigerating ingredients. This would be very useful to a chef, especially in ancient times, since refrigeration wouldn't be invented for a couple more years. Chozo's lobotomy refers to a theory that Kenjaku performed a lobotomy on Chozo. It originates from his first appearance in the manga where he is wearing bandages. On top of this, he has 2 black eyes in Shibuya, which are also a side effect of a lobotomy, and he also experiences confusion, memory loss, and a pounding headache. Next, we have moon theory. This is a big one. This theory stems from the importance of moon phases in Buddhism, as they represent death and rebirth. In Jujutsu Kaisen, there are a few important events that take place on symbolic phases of the moon. The first is Sukuna's reincarnation, which happens on a full moon, which symbolizes rebirth. The next event is the day that Tengen and Riko were supposed to merge. This is also a full moon, and the merging is considered a rebirth for Tengen. The next event is Itadori's execution. This happens on November 8th, which is a new moon, which symbolizes his death. Using this information and the information given to us in 143, we can assume that something big is going to happen on 12/8, as it is yet another new moon. So someone's probably gonna die. Next, we have the truth about the Camo clan. This theory basically states that the reason Kenjaku was able to kick Noritoshi out of the clan was because he awakened blood manipulation in the eldest son of the clan, who was previously cast aside for not inheriting the technique. My personal interpretation of this interaction was that Kenjaku became the next head of the Camo clan because he is technically Noritoshi Camo from 2,000 years ago, making him the eldest and most appropriate ruler. I don't know if either of these are particularly likely, but I really cannot think of another interpretation for this scene. Next up, we have Uraume is a Gojo. This theory originates from the physical similarities between Gojo and Uraume, as both have white hair and similarly shaped eyes. On top of this, there's also a connection between Michizane and Uraume. This connection is loose at best. Michizane was closely related to plums and plum blossoms, and Uraume's name means back plum, meaning there might be some sort of connection there. On top of this, Uraume might be inspired by Unai, as we already mentioned, and she is a character from a play written by Michizane. I'm not 100% sold on this one, but it would be cool if it was true, and it wouldn't be completely surprising either. Zenin clan rebirth references the possible rebirth of the entire Zenin clan as cursed spirits. This could actually happen, as they were all killed by Maki, who did not exorcise any of them because she couldn't. We already saw this happen with Noya, so it's possible that Ogi and the others could come back as well. Next, we have Yuki equals Netero. This is a new theory that was basically created by Yuki Copium. It states that the Yuki Kenjaku fight is a mirror to the Meruem Netero fight from Hunter x Hunter. In both, one party fights valiantly against a villain that is stronger than they are. They both resort to their secret weapon, and in both cases, these last resorts don't work right away. But in Hunter x Hunter, the radiation from the rose eventually kills the villain. This theory states that hawking radiation from Yuki's black hole will do something similar to Kenjaku. Maybe not kill, but at least limit his capabilities. And the final point on this iceberg is the correct philosophy. This point refers to the debate about the future of cursed energy and which direction is the correct way to go. We see 3 major philosophies. We see Yuki's belief that the evolution of humanity exists in moving away from cursed energy. We see Kenjaku and Geto's belief that evolution exists by optimizing cursed energy. And we have Gojo's belief that the status quo is for the best, but that some adjustments must be made. There's a lot of different factors that could go into deciding which of these is the best. From deciding the fate of regular people, to deciding if Jujutsu is needed in the first place. To me, the answer seems kind of obvious. Letting the vast majority of people die to further Jujutsu Sorcerers just seems kind of selfish and very cruel. But I guess everyone has different beliefs. Anyway, that's the Jujutsu Kaisen Iceberg. Sorry if I sound a little bit weird in this video, I'm currently getting over some COVID, but I hope you enjoyed regardless. I had a lot of fun making this video, and I want to thank you for watching. Please consider dropping a sub, and I'll see you next week for another video.